Be my guest. I tell the truth no matter what. Sometimes they don't like it. Sometimes they don't like it, but what are you going to do? I don't care. Yeah.
In the late 60s, and somebody threw a tag on it, and they named it Salsa. There's many different stories where the word came from. Let's just say the word came in. I mean, Tito Puente used to say, salsa. I put that on top of my spaghetti, meaning tomato sauce, but really what salsa was a combination of Afro-Cuban music mixed with New York bebop, with a little New York slickness thrown in.
Cuba en el año 56.
Sí, me voy para la universidad allá estudiando la música cubana.
No me digas, chico.
Sí, en los años 56, 57, 58.
¿Cómo era la vida en ese momento en Cuba?
Wow, tú sabes, muy diferente.
Muy diferente.
Cuando yo estaba ahí, yo estudiando con Fernando Ortiz y hay un americano, un italiano,
Ajá.
en la escuela, se llama Jerry Masucci.
Ah, sí.
Jerry Masucci trabaja para el turismo. En Cuba, pero trabajaba allá en este año y hay un restaurante al frente de la universidad, se llama Fania.
Fania.
Fania, Jerry puse el nombre, ahora son discos de Fania.
Ya, está bien.
Bueno, mi nombre es Larry Harlow, se llama El Judío Maravilloso. ¿Por qué? Porque yo soy fanático de un hombre, cambia el estilo de música cubana unos años antes, se llama Arsenio Rodríguez. El otro nombre de Arsenio se llama El Ciego Maravilloso. Y cuando yo grabo un número, se llama La Cartera, compuse de Arsenio, Junior González gritando, ¡ahora viene el maravilloso! Y Roberto dice, El Judío Maravilloso.
But we played in the Bronx. The Bronx had tons of clubs. Took me a while to get there, for the white boy to get to the Bronx. So we played in the Tritons, and we played Colgate Gardens, and we played the Bronx Casino, and we played Hunts Point Palace. And there was so many of them, the Club Cubano. It was like going to school, for me anyway. It was like going to school and learning the real deal. I get to see all the greats play. In the late 50s, all the bands were coming to the Palladium in New York from Cuba. So I got to see Aragon and Chaputin and Benny Moré and all these people before I went to Cuba. So it was quite a difference. We became friends. I was still a student, 17, 18 years old, and they would say, come on, you want Judío, you want to play with us? And I said, no, I'm not ready. And then I didn't see the guys from Aragon for maybe 10 years. And in 1969, we ran into each other in Venezuela, and they were playing a street concert. And they said, Judío. I said, yeah. I said, you want to play with us? I said, ahora sí. And then when I jumped in, and then they called Tres Lindas Cubanas, and I played that song with them, and I was so proud that I was able to play with Aragon. And I was in my 20s at that point. But now we're friends. They come to the States, so we meet up, or we meet in Europe and have a couple laughs, a couple beers, and talk about the old days. A lot of them have passed away also. There's only 2 original members left in that band. But we keep on going, like the Energizer,
Larry Harlow nunca había salido de los Estados Unidos. En 1956 viaja junto a unos compañeros para Cuba.
Cuando yo tengo 17 años, me voy para La Habana por la primera vez, para una vacación de Navidad de la escuela. Y cuando yo salgo del avión, yo soy en paraíso. porque hay orquestas en todas las esquinas. Hay música, en todos los sitios hay música. Tú tienes Benny Moré en una esquina, tú tienes Aragón en el otro, tú tienes Roberto Faz en el otro. Todos los grandes de música afrocubano tocando gratis para el público.
Larry regresa a Nueva York, pero vuelve a Cuba en febrero de 1957 para registrar todo lo que pudiese sobre la música cubana.
Y poco a poco yo conocí muchos músicos, especialmente Roberto Faz.
Es lo que pasa, María, ya no se te va bonita, y aunque no pinte los labios, siempre luce graciosita María.
Bueno, yo tuve más o menos 1 año y pico allá. Aprendo mucho de las raíces de religión, de Ifa, de Yoruba, de música de afrocubano, porque no existe la salsa.
Tremendo lío con María en Cuba, porque sin rumba ya no puede estar.
Estando en La Habana, Larry conoce a Jerry Masucci, quien años más tarde sería uno de los creadores del sello Fania.
A frente de Universidad de La Habana, de escuela de música, hay una cafetería. En esta cafetería, tú tienes un bajo acústico, timbales, tumbadoras y un piano. Y la cafetería se llama Fania. No es Fania, Fania. Bueno, en la Universidad de La Habana hay Jerry Masucci también estudiando la ley allá.
En 1958 inicia la Revolución Cubana y todos los norteamericanos deben abandonar la isla. Larry Harlow traslada sus conocimientos a la Gran Manzana, comienza a trabajar con orquestas latinas ya formadas y pronto crea su orquesta.
¿Cómo ve el movimiento de la salsa en Medellín entonces?
Bueno, Medellín tiene rumba, tú sabes. La gente sabe aquí. En Nueva York no sabe. Pues la música, bueno, tú sabes, el son es las raíces de la música de salsa.
Y eso es una gran clave para esto, el conocimiento acerca de las raíces.
Sí, las raíces nació en África, también pasa por los países en el Caribe, está bien, pero el son es la base de la mambo, pachanga, cha-cha-cha, todo, viene de son. Una sección de Cuba, en el norte de Cuba, empezar con los son y pasa por La Habana, tú sabes, La Habana de Nueva York, esa es la historia de la salsa.
Many years later, when I was very Cuban oriented, and I wanted my band to be. Matter of fact, I was so Cuban oriented. I used to put the horns in front of the band and the rhythm in the back, because that's how they used to do it in Cuba. And I had Chocolate Amanteros in my band, and I had a lot of Cubans in my band at that time. And Fellow was the first singer. He wasn't a great singer, but we got off on the first album together. And right after him, Monguito was leaving Pacheco's band, and was good friends with Chocolate. So Monguito did an album with me after that. And then I discovered a little 15-year-old kid singing with my brother's band. His name was Ismael Miranda from the Lower East Side of Puerto Rico, and he had something that just grabbed me. He was kind of good looking and cute, and I said, listen, you stand on the side of Monguito and you watch the way he plays the maracas, and you watch him sing and learn and watch and listen. And for 1 year he just sang coro, and when he was ready, that was the Boogaloo days, so we did his first album was El Exigente, a Boogaloo album.
And I read the music, and the music went boom, chee, boom, boom, chee, boom, boom. They said, wow, you played terrible, you know. I said, but I'm just reading what's on the paper. And they said, no, you have to learn how to interpret that. So I felt very bad. I ran out and I bought some albums. I bought like a Joe Loco record and a Noro Morales record, who were very fine pianists, and memorized their solos note by note. And
I kind of like moved to the next closest form of music where I could improvise, and that was Latin music. And I would listen to this music coming out of all these stores and say, wow, this is really swinging. So I would investigate a little further and start buying records, and became a record collector. And in those days, it was the very beginnings of what we called mambo music, Latin American music, mostly Machito, early Tito Puente and the Piccadilly Boys, the beginnings of Tito Rodriguez, Machito, La Playa Sextet, and things like that. And I was asked to play in this Latin band that was mainly 90% African-American guys that played up in Harlem, and a guy by the name of Hugo Dickens, who had 3 or 4 orchestras going at one time. He had so much work he couldn't keep one going, so he would make 2 or 3. And they needed a piano player, and they said, do you know how to read music? I said, of course I know how to read. I'm a music student. So, and they would play these old Cuban stocks that were printed on recycled paper. Mambo number 1, Mambo number 5, da, 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 you know, really simple stuff. And I would look at the music and I would play don, chin, don, don, chin, don, don. I would read what was on the paper. And they say, wow, you play terrible. You know, I don't know if we can keep you in the band. I really felt really bad. So I ran down to these record stores and I bought a Noro Morales record, who was a great Puerto Rican pianist, and a Joe Loco record, who was another pianist, and Rene Touzé, guys like that. And I would memorize their solos. Latin music at that particular time was really very simple. It was based on 2 chord progressions, 1 chord progression, maybe 4 chord progressions. And they say, take a solo. So I knew how to play a C7 solo, I knew how to play a 1-4-5 progression, and I would memorize their solos. And I'd go to the next rehearsal, and I'd say, okay, piano solo. And I'd roll off a Noro Morales solo. It wasn't me making it up, I was doing it by memory. And they said, okay, we're gonna keep you in the band. So I felt good. And little by little, the 1 or 2 Hispanic musicians that were in the band kind of explained clave to me, how clave fit in the scheme of Latin music. And being the musician that I was, I could see it on the paper. I could see it physically on the paper. And then I saw how the orchestrations fell and how everything fell on these beats, on these clave beats. And I started to understand a little more how the basic rhythms of Afro-Cuban music. Then I started collecting, and I started getting into the real deal. I started listening to Chapotin and Arsenio, and Orchestra Aragon, and Orchestra Riverside, and all the Benny Moré, and all the great musicians that were in Cuba, guys. And we all hung out together. We used to go to the Palladium together, and we went to Cuba for the first time and got off the plane, and here we were in a paradise, a mambo paradise. And there was a band on every corner. There was a band in every restaurant. There was national radio, national TV going on for free every single day. All the clubs were $1, $2. It was just amazing. So I stayed for 8 days, and unfortunately had to come back, and I came home, and then 2 months later I decided to take a little sabbatical from my college education, and I packed up and I went to Havana. But I was a little smarter. I brought cameras, a big old Webcore 60-pound tape recorder, reel-to-reel, you know, a lot of film, a lot of pencils, music paper, and stuff like that. And I started making friends with all the musicians and with the people at the university, and wound up going to school and studying. And my Spanish kept getting a little better, poco a poco. Everything was nice, but I was kind of permitted to go on the band buses, especially with Aragon, especially with Roberto Faz, to all the different provinces in Cuba when they played their gigs, when they played their dances, and just from hanging out, I learned so much. I mean, you couldn't find this in books what I learned. And I taped everything I could.